Hi, everybody. So we're looking at week number 9 this time around, Introduction to Simple Experiments. And we've been talking about some elements of this along the way, but we will look at like an example of a simple experiment. What are the different experimental variables? How can we make causal claims, some different types of designs, and then using those four validities that we've covered to kind of interrogate those causal claims. So when we start with this, let's start with just like a very simple idea of an experiment, right? Like if we were to conduct a very basic experiment, wondering, for example, what are the effects of sleep on exam scores? So the question maybe that we're asking is, are test scores impacted by the amount of time spent sleeping the night before an exam? So if we were interested in studying that, if we put it in the form of a question, what is the effect of sleep on exam scores? I think that kind of gives us a very easy way to identify the independent variable and then the dependent variable. And remember that question I told you a long time ago, what is the effect of the IV on the DV? So what is the effect of sleep on exam scores? Sleep is going to be our independent variable. It is the one that we are manipulating, and then we are going to be measuring exam scores, right? So the independent variable here is sleep, right? And the dependent variable is how well you do on a test. So with an independent variable, this is the one that we're going to manipulate or change. And it should have some different levels or conditions. In this case, maybe we divide up, did you get, 0 to 2 hours of sleep, 3 to 5 hours of sleep, and so on. We could divide it up into a number of hours or kind of clusters of hours, but different conditions, maybe we sleep deprive someone as well, could be interesting to do. And then we're measuring the effects of that, which is the dependent variable. It is dependent on what happens with the one that we manipulate. So in this case, our dependent variable would be the exam score, which we're measuring by how well you do on a specific test. So when we're using experiments, the great thing about them, they're a little more complicated, right? Which is a downside. But the wonderful thing about experiments is they support what we can say is a causal claim. We've talked about correlations or association claims, that two things are related to each other. But just because two things are related doesn't mean that they cause each other. So we're going to look at experiments supporting causal claims because they do things like take into account covariance, temporal precedence, and internal validity. And we'll talk more about all of those different things, but we can start to look at cause and effect when we control for other elements. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot in this chapter. So one thing that experiments do is they establish something called covariance. Is the causal variable related to the effect variable? The independent variable answers the question like compared to what? So what we have in an experiment is we have a comparison group or a comparison condition, or maybe a control group. And you don't always need a control group, but we do need something to make a comparison with, right? So if we only measure one amount of sleep, we have nothing to compare it with. So if we measure a bunch of different levels of sleep, then we have different things that we can compare it to. So when we're testing something specific, sometimes we might have what we call a control group or a treatment group or a placebo group. Let's say that we're looking at the effect of a new drug. So we might have a group where somebody gets the drug, they get the treatment, and then a group where they get the placebo, which is something that they don't know whether they're getting the treatment or not. And so we're looking to see that the independent variable varies or changes is related to the dependent variable. They vary together, which is the term covariance. We also want to establish something called temporal precedence. Does the causal variable come before the effect variable? If we manipulate the independent variable, we can try and ensure that it comes first. Now, in this example that we're looking at with hours of sleep and exam scores, this would be hard to go the other way, right? So number of hours you sleep makes sense to affect exam scores, but would exam scores affect the number of hours you sleep? I mean, maybe, right? If you did really well or really poorly, it might affect how you slept. But sometimes when we're looking at something, it might be that one came before the other. We're trying to control for as many things as we can and establish temporal precedence that the causal variable came before the effect variable. And sometimes that makes a little more sense or is a little more complicated than others. A well-designed experiment also looks for things related to internal validity. Are there alternative explanations for the results? So, thinking about exam scores and sleep, there are other things that could play a role, right? Like, if you think about it for just a second, like, how many hours did you study? Feels like it might be a bigger predictor than the number of hours you slept. We might look at things like, what did you eat for breakfast? How is your comfort level with the subject, right? There are so many other extraneous variables other than the independent variable that could add what we'll call noise, right? They add other explanations, they add extraneous or extra information that we have to try to find ways to control for, right? And so there are a lot of different ways that we can do that, which we'll talk about, but we can have what are called confounds or confounding variables or systemic variability, where there's something else that varies systematically along with the independent variable. And again, that could be something like how much you studied or all sorts of other factors. So whenever we're doing an experiment, we have to try and look at what are those alternative explanations? What are those extraneous variables? And what are the different ways that we can try and control for some of those confounds or variabilities? We also look at things like selection effects. Are there other alternative explanations for the results in terms of maybe we selected participants, in a not the best way, right? We want to try and do what's called random assignment, where we randomly assign participants to the different conditions, which will kind of adjust for things like selection effects. Because maybe something about one level of the independent variable is different because of the people who are in it. So we always want to make sure that we put people in the different conditions randomly. One way of doing this is called block randomization, which the book talks about a little bit, where we maybe measure all the conditions occurring at once before any of them are repeated, or it could just be something that we do with like some kind of randomly generated, piece of equipment or like program. But we want to make sure that people are assigned randomly to the different conditions. So I'm like, oh, look at Kitty. This is a Nugget, right? I'm like, she came too close, right? So ends up in the video, right? And now I'm distracted. I'm like, all I can think about is a kitty, right? She'll stay with me maybe for a minute. We'll see. So lots of different types of experiments, and we're going to talk about complicated ones later, which are factorial designs. But for now, kind of keeping it a little bit more simple, we can divide these up into a couple of different types. So independent group designs or between subject designs. And then there's within group designs or within subjects. So an independent group design or between subjects is when different groups of participants are placed at different levels of the independent variable. So one group of people gets one set and a different group of people gets a different set. They get different conditions. They're independent. We're looking at the differences between the subjects, hence the different names for this. Versus within groups, each participant gets every level of the independent variable, right? So they're going to see all of the test signs in this example, right? And we're comparing the difference within the groups or between the subjects within the group. Shouldn't have used the word between because that might make it confusing. But you're looking at like within that cluster versus between the subjects with different conditions. So we can usually break them down into these two things. Do you get all levels of the independent variable, or do you get different levels and we're making that comparison? We can also break it up even further to talk about like, is it a pre-test, post-test design? What kind of design is it within these independent groups? One that we sometimes see is called the post-test only, where you're randomly assigned to independent variable groups and you're only tested on the dependent variable once. So we randomly assign you and then we measure you on the dependent variable, right? And randomly assign and then we measure on the dependent variable. Not the best because we don't have anything necessarily to compare it to ahead of time, but there might be conditions or experiments where this is the most relevant. So it is one that might be used post-test measurement only. What tends to be a little bit more common is a pre-test, post-test, where we randomly assign the independent variable to different groups. We test on the dependent variable before, and after exposure to the independent variable. So like in this example here, we randomly assign people to two different groups. We have their verbal GRE score. They take a mindfulness class or a nutrition class, and then we look at their verbal GRE score again. So what we can do here is we can look at what was their score before and what is their score after. So that's a huge benefit of this, right? Is we can get like an average score here and an average score here and compare it to the average here and here. So it gives us kind of this like known level of information that's a little bit better and more involved than what we see with just a post-test only sort of design. Within groups, designs, which we sometimes call like a repeated measure design, is when we measure on the dependent variable after exposure to every level of the independent variable, right? So for this one, we have a group. They taste chocolate with a confederate, then they rate the chocolate, then they taste the chocolate alone, and then they rate the chocolate, where we're going to repeatedly measure you, right? Use the names to help you a little bit with this. So we're looking at like what are the differences within groups, but we're going to measure you on the dependent variable after every level of exposure to the independent variable. So we're repeatedly measuring you, and that's one way that this design could take place. We could also see it be a concurrent measures design, where you're exposed to all levels of the independent variable at like roughly the same time. And then we have a single attitude or preference is the dependent variable, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of concurrently or at the same time expose you to pretty much everything. So one group gets the female and the male face, and then we look at the looking preference, right? So we're concurrently measuring you rather than repeatedly measuring you. Again, the names kind of give you a little bit of a clue if you're confused. When we're looking at internal validity within groups, we have to control for some effects, right? Again, noise, right? Think of these effects as noise or other explanations or things that can get in the way. One thing that might cause a problem is called the order effect, where we exposure to one level of the independent variable influences your reactions to other levels. It could be practice effects, so you get better from practice or you get worse due to fatigue. Let's say that we have you take the exam more than once. Maybe the second time on the exam you do better because of a practice effect getting better. Or maybe by the third attempt you do worse because you're tired and you're over it, right? So what order you do things in might carry like some issues. How many times you've done them with like the practice effect can make an issue. Or sometimes we have carryover effects where there's some kind of contamination from one condition to the next. Let's say, like, for example, your first bite of chocolate is better than the second bite, or maybe that chocolate affects the taste of the next bite of chocolate, right? So we can oftentimes have these issues where either the order or practice or something from carrying over can affect the internal validity or the accuracy of the results that we get. One way to kind of help control for that is to use something called counterbalancing. And we can do this in like a full way or a little bit more of a partial way. Full counterbalancing is when all possible condition orders are used. So we give somebody like every possible combination, we kind of break it up and we measure it in all sorts of different ways. Versus partial counterbalancing, a little easier to do. We use possible orders and what is possible. And we might use something like a Latin square, like you see here, where we have one group go 1, 3, 2, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 4. Like we break up the order and kind of mix it up. So by randomly assigning, like in this example here, you have people doing things in different orders. So this person tastes the chocolate alone and then they rate it. Then they taste the chocolate with a confederate and then they rate it. Versus these people are tasting with a confederate and then rating and then alone and then rating. And then we can compare. So by doing them in different orders and kind of balancing that, we're trying to control for some of those order effects or carryover effects that can affect the results or the validity, the accuracy of what it is that we're trying to determine. So when we interrogate causal claims, we want to try and use these four validities that have come up. We have construct, external, statistical, and internal, and statistical being the one that we're looking at the least. But construct validity, we always want to make sure that we are actually capturing the variables that we're trying to capture, right? How well have we defined the construct? How well are we accurately measuring the abstract concepts that we are claiming, right? So, like if we're testing intelligence, how well have we captured the construct of intelligence? External validity was all about generalization. How well can we generalize or extend the results beyond the study? Would these results occur out in the real world? Something that we can really try and get at through random sampling. Statistical validity, again, the one that we're looking at the least, is the difference statistically significant? In other words, are we pretty sure that it wasn't just chance, right? And we can look at this with like covariance and looking at different, statistical formulas and calculating the effect size and so on. And then internal validity, are there other alternative explanations for the outcome? And that's something that we looked at probably the most in this chapter, those design confounds and selection effects and order effects. Are the results due to the manipulation of that independent variable? Did sleep actually cause a change in exam scores? Did caffeine actually cause a change in reaction time? How well can we determine that it's actually due to what it is that we're studying? So, with any experiment, we want to make sure we're always looking at these four different types of validity, and for our purposes, mainly all except the statistical one. So that is week number 9, looking at Introduction to Simple Experiments. Make sure that you watch that you read through the lecture as always, and that you've done your reading for the week. If you have any questions or thoughts, feel free to email me. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your week.